What if I told you that one of the most underrated, most charming, and most criminally overlooked fantasy television experiences of the last decade is not Game of Thrones? It is not House of the Dragon. It is not even The Lord of the Rings on Amazon. It is a quiet little show set in the same universe as all of those giants. A show about a big, clumsy, lovable knight and his tiny, genius kid companion just trying to survive in a brutal medieval world. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms arrived on HBO and immediately reminded millions of viewers that fantasy does not always have to be about kings and dragons and political betrayal. Sometimes, the best fantasy stories are about the little guy, the underdog, the servant who is smarter than everyone around him. And now that Season 1 is over, and Season 2 is not arriving until at least 2027, the real question every fan is asking is this: what do I watch next? That is exactly what we are breaking down today. 7 fantasy television shows that will fill that dunk and egg-shaped hole in your heart. Some of these you have heard of. Some of these you almost certainly have not. Every single one of them is worth your time. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is the place where we go deep on fantasy, science fiction, historical drama, and everything in between. We do not do surface-level takes here. We go into the storytelling, the production, the themes, the things that make a show truly worth watching. If that sounds like your kind of content, hit subscribe right now, because we have a lot more where this is coming from. Now, before we jump into the list, let me give you a quick breakdown of what makes a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms so special, because understanding that is the key to understanding why every single show on this list belongs here. That A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is based on the dunk and egg novellas written by George R.R. Martin, the same man who created Game of Thrones. But here is what makes the show so refreshingly different from everything else in the franchise. It is not about royals. It is not about powerful houses scheming for the Iron Throne. It follows Sir Duncan the Tall, or Dunk, a hedge knight, basically the lowest rank of knighthood possible, and his squire, a mysterious boy named Egg. The world they inhabit is still the full Game of Thrones world, dark and brutal and full of political danger. But the perspective is completely different. This is low fantasy told inside a high fantasy universe. It is character-driven. It is surprisingly funny. It is warm in a way that Game of Thrones almost never allowed itself to be. And it has production values that rival anything on television right now. That combination, grounded characters, gorgeous visuals, humor, heart, and a richly realized world, is exactly what we are looking for in every show on this list. Now let's go. Now, if you have not watched Merlin, you might be tempted to dismiss it. It has been off the air for over a decade. It started in 2008. The first season has some rough edges, but here is what I need you to understand. Merlin is one of those shows that rewards patience, and by the time it reaches its later seasons, it becomes genuinely extraordinary television. And for fans of Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, it might actually be the single most obvious and most satisfying next watch on this entire list. Here is the premise. Merlin reimagines the Arthurian legend from the very beginning. Not the legend as you know it, where Merlin is the wise old wizard and Arthur is already the great king. This show starts long before any of that. Merlin is a young man, awkward, talented, untested, and secretly gifted with powerful magic in a kingdom where magic is outlawed and punishable by death. He travels to Camelot, where his mother sends him, and he becomes the personal servant of a young, arrogant, somewhat insufferable Prince Arthur. Sound familiar? The servant who is actually the smarter, more capable one. The hero who has no idea yet how heroic he is going to become. The two of them are forced together into this unlikely partnership, and they go on adventures through a world that is medieval, dangerous, and full of mythological creatures and magical threats. The parallel to A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is almost impossible to miss. Dunk and Egg are Merlin and Arthur. The dynamic is the same. An underdog pairs up with a young person of higher status, and together they stumble into greatness while the servant quietly holds everything together. Both shows are deeply character-driven. Both shows are grounded fantasies that care more about the relationship between the two leads than they do about epic battles and political scheming. Both shows have a warmth and a sense of humor that makes them incredibly easy to watch. And like a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Merlin starts with a strong foundation and only gets better as it goes. If you have not seen it, start immediately. Power through the first few episodes, and I promise you, you will be hooked. This one is genuinely one of the most underrated historical fantasies ever made, and the fact that it does not come up more often in conversations like this one is a genuine crime. Da Vinci's Demons follows a 25-year-old Leonardo da Vinci living in Renaissance Florence. And before you think this sounds like a dry history lesson, let me be very clear. This show is absolutely anything but dry. This version of Leonardo is brilliant to the point of supernatural. He is reckless. He is obsessive. He is charismatic and infuriating and impossible not to watch. And he lives in a world where the Catholic Church controls information and thought, where secret societies operate in the shadows, and where the line between science and magic is basically non-existent. The show received the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Main Title Design and Outstanding Original Main Title Theme Music in 2013. It was also nominated for Outstanding Special Visual Effects, and those nominations were completely deserved. The production on this show is stunning. The visuals, the costumes, the set design, it all looks cinematic in a way that most television simply does not. And that is one of the key things it shares with a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Both shows have production values that make you forget you are watching television. Both feel like movies that just happen to be much longer and much better than most movies. Beyond the visuals, Da Vinci's Demons is fantastic in the same way that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is fantastic, because it knows exactly what it is and it commits completely. It does not care about strict historical accuracy. It takes the real world and injects it with fantasy, mystery, and spectacle, and it owns every ridiculous, wonderful moment. The script is sharp, the acting is excellent, and the story manages to be both genuinely intelligent and completely entertaining at the same time. If you want something with that same swagger and quality that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms has, Da Vinci's Demons is your answer. I know, I can already hear the skepticism. A show about a 19th century American poet is not what you were expecting on a list of fantasy shows for Game of Thrones fans. But hear me out, because Dickinson is genuinely one of the most creative, most original, and most beautifully crafted fantasy-adjacent television shows of the last decade, and it shares more DNA with A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms than you might imagine. Dickinson tells the story of Emily Dickinson, the famously reclusive American poet, as a young woman fighting against every social expectation placed on her. She wants an education. She wants a career. She wants to write and publish and be taken seriously as an artist in a world that expects her to be a wife and nothing more. The show incorporates magical realism and surrealism throughout. Emily experiences dreamlike, fantastical sequences. She meets Death himself, played brilliantly as a recurring character. And these moments of fantasy are woven into the fabric of her real life in a way that feels both whimsical and emotionally true. Here is why this belongs on this list. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and Dickinson are both, at their core, stories about underdogs fighting against the limitations placed on them by society. Dunk has to perform a kind of respectability he does not feel. Emily has to perform a femininity and passivity she does not feel. Both shows are about the mask you wear to get by in a world that was not built for people like you. Both have extraordinary production values. The costumes in Dickinson are breathtaking. The casting is perfect, and both shows are able to be funny and light and genuinely joyful, while also exploring incredibly dark and heavy themes underneath the surface. If you give Dickinson a chance, you will be absolutely blown away. This one comes with some serious credentials. Susanna Clarke's novel won the Hugo Award, which is basically the Oscar of science fiction and fantasy literature. Time magazine named it the best novel of the year when it was published. And the BBC miniseries adaptation is, remarkably, as good as the book. That almost never happens, and yet here we are. The story is set in an alternate 19th century England during the Napoleonic Wars. Magic exists in this world, but it has been dormant for centuries, practiced only by theoretical magicians who study it but cannot perform it. Then two men change everything. Mr. Norrell is a reclusive, obsessive, and deeply cautious magician who has spent his life collecting every book on magic ever written. Jonathan Strange is a naturally gifted novice who takes to magic like he was born for it. The two team up to bring magic back to England and help defeat Napoleon. But their partnership sours quickly, and they become enemies, each representing a completely different philosophy about what magic is and what it should be used for. What makes this show a perfect follow-up to A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is the pacing and the character development. Like the HBO show, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is quick and satisfying to binge. The episodes are well-paced, the characters are deeply developed, and the world building is extraordinarily rich without ever feeling overwhelming. It has that same quality of making you feel like you're watching something genuinely literary, something adapted from source material that was created with real craft and care. And here is a remarkable detail. George R.R. Martin himself praised this series on his personal blog. He said he saw the BBC production before he read the novel, and that he loved both. When a man who created the universe that Dunk and Egg live in gives a show his personal stamp of approval, that tells you something important. Now, Vikings might seem like the most obvious pick on this list, but there is a specific and important reason it belongs here that goes beyond just being set in the medieval period. The reason Vikings is a perfect companion to A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is not simply because it is a period drama. It is because of how Vikings handles magic and the supernatural. The show follows Ragnar Lothbrok, a farmer and warrior in 9th century Scandinavia who dreams of sailing west to raid and explore. He challenges the corrupt local earl who stands in his way, and the series follows his rise from ordinary man to legendary figure. Whether Vikings is historical drama or historical fantasy is genuinely debatable, and that debate is actually part of what makes it so fascinating. The show incorporates mythological figures from Norse tradition. Odin appears. There are seers and visions and omens that come true with uncanny precision. But it all happens in a way that is subtle enough that you can interpret it as the genuine religious belief of the characters rather than literal magic. That subtlety is exactly what makes Vikings so similar to A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms in terms of tone. The Game of Thrones prequel is a low fantasy show set inside a high fantasy universe. Magic exists, but it is rare and subtle and does not dominate the narrative. Vikings operates the same way. It is one of the most grounded and human portrayals of how people with deep religious belief actually experience the world. And that honest, grounded approach to the supernatural is something both shows share. Vikings is also genuinely epic in scale while remaining deeply personal in focus. And that balance is something that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms gets exactly right as well. Carnival Row is a show that critics largely underestimated, but audiences recognized immediately for what it was: a smart, emotionally resonant, visually extraordinary fantasy drama with something genuinely important to say. The show is set in a Victorian fantasy world where magical creatures, fae, fauns, various mythological beings, have been displaced from their homelands after human colonizers invaded and occupied their countries. These creatures now live in the human city of the Burg as refugees, facing discrimination, xenophobia, and systemic oppression at every level of society. The story follows a police detective named Rycroft Philostrate, known as Philo, who is investigating a series of murders in the Carnival Row district where the immigrant creatures are forced to live. His investigation brings him back into contact with Vignette Stonemoss, a fairy refugee and his former love, and the two of them navigate a world that does not want them together and does not want creatures like Vignette to exist at all. The connection to A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is immediate and obvious the moment you understand the premise. Both shows are explicitly about the lower class. Both shows are about the struggle for upward mobility in a society that has decided certain people belong at the bottom. Both shows take the same fundamental fantasy world-building approach. Gorgeous, immersive, specific environments that feel real and lived in, with a particular emphasis on the gritty, unglamorous side of life in that world. Both shows also have remarkable musical scores, the kind of soundtracks that you find yourself listening to outside the show, the kind that become inseparable from the world of the story. And both shows feature visuals that are strikingly distinct, completely committed to their aesthetic, and utterly unforgettable. Britannia is the most underrated show on this entire list. It is genuinely baffling how little attention this series gets in conversations about great fantasy television, because it is bold and weird and completely committed to its own vision in a way that very few shows manage to be. The premise follows the Roman imperial army as they attempt to invade Britain in 43 CE, picking up where Julius Caesar's earlier failed invasion left off. But the Britain they find is not a simple collection of tribes waiting to be conquered. It is a land of fierce Celtic warrior women, political intrigue between rival clans, and above all, the Druids, mysterious, terrifying, powerful mystics who can channel forces from the underworld itself. The parallels to A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms are numerous and specific. Both shows are fundamentally comedic stories told inside dark worlds. This is one of the key things that Britannia gets right that most fantasy television does not. It understands that humor and horror and genuine dramatic weight can all exist in the same story simultaneously. The tone of Britannia shifts constantly and intentionally, from genuinely frightening supernatural horror to absurdist comedy to deeply emotional character moments. And those shifts feel purposeful rather than chaotic. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms does exactly the same thing, and it is one of the main reasons both shows feel so unique within their genre. Both shows also have exceptional world building. Britannia creates a version of ancient Britain that feels completely realized and completely unlike anything else on television. Full of specific beliefs, specific rituals, specific social structures that make the world feel real even when the supernatural elements are at their most extreme. And like a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the political conflicts and power struggles at the center of Britannia are the true engine of the narrative. The brutality of human beings to one another, regardless of the presence of magic, is what both shows keep returning to. If you have not seen Britannia, it is time to fix that .so there you have it. 7 fantasy television shows that deserve your attention while you wait for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Season 2. Let me do a quick recap. Number 1, Merlin, for the character dynamic and the grounded medieval adventure. Number 2, Vinci's Demons, for the stunning production and the irreverent, confident storytelling. Number 3, Dickinson, for the underdog story, the magical realism, and the extraordinary production design. Number 4, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, for the literary world building and the stamp of approval from George R.R. Martin himself. Number 5, Vikings, for the subtle supernatural elements and the deeply human portrait of people who genuinely believed in something greater than themselves. Number 6, Carnival, for the lower-class perspective and the gorgeous, gritty visual identity. And number 7, Britannia, for the tonal balance of dark and comedic and the exceptional world building. Every single one of these shows has something real to offer fans of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Some of them will be your next obsession. Some of them might become all-time favorites. The only way to find out is to start watching. If you made it this far, thank you genuinely for spending this time with us. If this video helped you, hit the like button. It makes a real difference for the channel, and it helps other fantasy fans find this content. Subscribe if you have not already, and leave a comment below telling me which of these shows you are most excited to check out, or which ones you have already seen and what you thought. We read every single comment, and we love hearing from you. Until next time, stay watching, stay curious, and we will see you in the next one.